The moment Everest hung up the call, Marshall felt a flood of emotions overwhelm him. Everyone had been crying and grateful that he was alive. His parents were there, holding each other as they told him how much they love him. Ryder's face was the happiness he'd ever seen, and then there were the pups. They missed him. They were mourning for him, and he thought that they didn't want him. But he was wrong. They searched everywhere, even through a storm, to find him. He never heard from any apologies from them at once. At least he could still hear them in his head. Marshall wanted nothing more to do than to leap out of bed, rush down to Adventure Bay, and hug them all until his front paws fell off. But then he remembered how they hurt him, yelled at him, and his heart began to feel like it was in pain again. Could he still remember those harsh words that drove him to do this? But they looked sorry. He then closed his eyes. He wanted to forgive his friends. He really did. But what if this happened again? Could he stay in Paw Patrol? Could he trust them? He had to make sure. "Jake, Everest," asked Marshall, getting their attention. "Can you do something for me?" At the moment the call ended, everyone got into their vehicles and rushed off for Jake's mountain, sirens blaring. Chase was probably pretty sure everyone was in Adventure Bay was confused by this, but that wasn't important. What's important was that Marshall, his brother, was alive. Chase wanted to cry. He probably was, but he was too busy rushing off ahead for the rest of the pack as they drove up the mountain. Chase had so many things he wanted to say to Marshall, but most importantly was the apology. He didn't care if Marshall forgave him or not. He just wanted to hug him and tell him how sorry he was. He looked behind him and saw the rest of the Paw Patrol, Ryder's ATV, and his father's truck containing Katie and Marshall's parents. Looking up, he saw his crushed sky, not too far from behind him. He blushed in thinking about how they confessed just moments ago, and as they were about to kiss. "Are we boyfriend and girlfriend now?" He knew they would have to have a talk, but only once after they talked to Marshall first. Before he knew it, he reached the main cabin where Jake and Everest lived, and was about to rush inside when the said pup owner stood in front of the door. "Wow, dude, can't go in there just yet. We need to talk." "Jake, you have to let me in. I need to see Marshall," shouted Chase, growling and showing his teeth. Upon seeing her owner threatened, Everest stood up in front of Chase and growled back. "He said to wait. If you're actually using your head to change, you won't do something stupid like you did to Marshall." "What did I say? I'm his best friend," shouted Chase. "At least I was a better friend than you six were," shouted Everest. "You don't. Chase, heel." Ryder's command has instantly brought him up to sit down. He slowly turned around and saw how the others were staring at him, with either a worry of disappointment. Ryder then walked up and shaking his head before he put his hand down on the dog's head. "I know you want to see Marshall, but yelling at the ones who saved him isn't going to help." Chase whimpered in shame as he looked at Marshall's saviors and bowed. "I'm sorry. You're right, Everest. I haven't been a good friend. I helped made this horrible mistake happen. Forgive me?" Everest didn't say anything, but sighed. "I'll forgive you, if Marshall does." Which leads us to what we'll need to talk about. "Marshall wants us to talk to you free in groups," said Chase, shaking his head. "Dude's been through a lot and wants to get some stuff out of his chest." "Does he hate us?" asked Rubble, whimpering. Jake and Everest looked at each other before the former answered, "We don't know. That's up to you guys to find out." All the 5 pups sighed and lowered their heads even further. Chase even closed his eyes and realized that he might not get to see Marshall to trust him again after what happened. "Yeah, we deserved it. Our actions caused all this to happen. If Marshall can't forgive me or the other pups, I'll just have to live in the burden for the rest of my life." "Who's going first?" asked Ryder's father. "He wants his parents first," said Everest. Without wasting a second, the 2 adult Dalmatians rushed in to see their son, followed by Jake and Everest. "Mom! Dad!" shouted Marshall as he was tackled by his 2 parents. He laughed as they nuzzled with joy, barked and licked. It made Chase and Everest smile as they watched the family. After the excitement had worn off, the 2 hugged their child, with tears dripping down from their eyes. Marshall whimpered but let out a soft smile on his face. I missed you. I thought when I was going to die, What were you thinking, Marshall?" shouted Misty in a tone that made everyone in the room wince. "You almost died out here. How could you do something as stupid as run away from your home? If you were all that upset, or needed to be away for a while, you should have told us, and we could have taken you home. Instead, we fought you. And with a heartfelt cry, Misty held her son as Blaze nuzzled his wife. When we heard you died, we thought our world had fallen apart. We didn't know what to do. How could we have gone out without our boy? Marshall felt the guilt in his heart stabbed him again, like a sharp harpoon. I didn't mean to make you cry. I was stupid. I'm sorry. I'll never run away again. It's okay, Marshall, whispered Blaze, as he hugged his son and smiled. You're safe thanks to Everest and Jake. That's all that matters. Yeah, I owe them a lot, whispered Marshall, giving Everest a small, soft smile. In fact, he turned around and gave Everest a toothy smile. Everest, you have my permission to marry my son. Welcome to the family. What? Dad? They both shouted, Everest and Marshall, who both blushes as images of them in the wedding ceremony entered their heads. Misty just rolled her eyes and swatted her playful, laughing husband in the face. Ignore him. He's just being an idiot again. Just trying to lighten up the mood. Marshall giggled before sighing. I'm really sorry I ran away. If you wanted to bring me home as punishment, I understand. You don't want to stay in the Paw Patrol? Asked Blaze. Marshall lowered his gaze. I didn't know if Ryder was upset at me, and what about the other pups of what they did to me? Blaze lays a paw on his son's shoulder. Marshall, your friends were all mourning for you at your funeral just a few hours ago. They regret everything they did and showed how much they loved you by looking at you nonstop. Do you really think they offered to be punished by us for what they did? They did? Why? Asked Marshall. Because they thought they were all responsible for your death, said Misty. They just submitted judgment to us and we could have done anything to them, but we chose to forgive them. Once they looked into our eyes, we could already tell that they were taking everything aback what they just said about you. Marshall didn't know what to say. He just sighed and nodded. I see. They really regret it? That much? After a long talking session with his parents, Marshall called in for Ryder and his dad. Katie decided to stay behind, seeing that this was a family thing and she was only there for support. When Marshall saw his owner face to face for the first time in days, he jumped out of bed and into his arms, laughing and licking him. Ryder, with tears on his, he laughed as he hugged his fire pup harder than he ever could. Ryder's father smiled and scratched a Dalmatian's ear. Good to see you're among the living, Marshall. Thanks, Professor, said Marshall. Before he turned to see Ryder, whimpered, I'm sorry I wasn't a good pup. What do you mean, Marshall? Asked Ryder. I ran away and worried everyone. Even worse, I made you think I was dead. I'm so sorry. Marshall then jumped off of Ryder's arms and back towards his bed, his back facing his owner. And if you don't want me anymore for what I did, I understand. A surprise hug was the answer for Ryder whispered, Don't ever say that, Marshall. You're one of my pups. If anything, this is entirely my fault. I'm responsible for you and I failed. I'm sorry. Ryder, it's not your fault, shouted Marshall, turning around and shaking his head. It's mine. I ran away. But I should have stopped you if I know what the pups did, said Ryder. I didn't tell everyone. I should have gone to talk to you. Enough, Ryder's dad shouted as he got their attention. The truth is there, and there is a lot to be blamed for, but there's no point in just thinking about it all in the past. He put his hand on both pup and owner and smiled. You two found each other, and you've learned from your mistakes. That's the most important part. He turned to his son. Ryder, did you not scold the pups for their actions and organize that best rescue you could to help find Marshall? Never once giving up until it seemed like all was lost. You did this to best rescue Marshall and showed how much you cared for him. But most importantly, you kept calm when the situation and called for it. And you don't say you could have prevented this. Your pups could have known better what to do what they did. But I have a feeling they know better now, thanks to this experience. He then turned to Marshall. Marshall, what you did was foolish. We both understand you were hurt, but never again there wasn't anyone out there who loved you. You are family to me and Ryder, and he always will be for you. And I know that there may be thinking the pup betrayed you, But friends all fight all the time. They care about you. Did you know that Chase and Sky fought a bear together because they believed it killed you? Wait, that bear? The one that hurt me? Asked Marshall, jaw dropping. Yep. Chase and Ryder. Well, Chase and Sky ignored my orders to come home because of the storm and continued to look for you. They fought that bear and won for you. Marshall just sat there, stunned and all beyond reason. His friends, they fought for him. They almost died for him. He closed his eyes and nodded. Ryder, I think I need to talk to the pups.